Hello to everyone. How are you guys doing? It's great to see so many people interested in our webinar. I'm also excited myself. I'll give a quick introduction, and and then we'll dive right in. I'm going to invite my two friends, Jason and Mike from Chartmetric, who we've all came here to hear about their insights and. So let's start. My name is Zover. I'm one of the co-founders of IndieFlow, which whoever doesn't know us, we are a platform to manage day-to-day workflows for independent artists, managers, and labels. I'm also a musician myself and a Chartmetric addict. So it's a great honor to be hosting this event. And you guys can feel free also to introduce yourselves and what you guys are doing, whether you're artists or managers. During the whole session, then you can also ask questions below. So it's going to be pretty dynamic webinar where every 10-15 minutes we can stop and answer your questions, because I'm sure there are quite a lot of questions out there. I'd be happy to introduce to you my two friends, Mike Warner, who is a founder and author of Playlist Hard. He's a musician himself and has been with Chartmetric within the last few years. Jason Joven, who was also part of Songtrust, Live Nation, Warner, and for the last 2 years also has been a part of Chartmetric. I'm sure you guys can tell about yourselves better than myself. So I'm going to invite them on screen. Let's take a look. Okay. There we go. Hey, Jason.
Hey, man. Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
Good. And you, sir?
I'm great. Happy to have you guys. We're going to wait another second for Mike. Let's see that he's able to connect. There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Mike.
From all coasts of the US. So guys, it's great to have you here with us. It's great to give value these days to musicians, especially like with everyone at home, so we can really, focus this webinar on how us artists can actually take valuable insights and data from your amazing tool and kind of make actionable action items with, and kind of just get us more familiar with the whole data world, Chartmetric, and so on. So I'm going to give you guys the stage, and I'm going to step off. And everyone here that joined us, it's great to have you again. And please feel free to ask questions during this webinar. I'm going to ask the first one myself so you can see where it pops up underneath your screen. So I'm giving you guys the stage.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Mike, you want to introduce yourself first?
Put me on the spot first. Okay, sure.
Yeah, man.
Let me do the best job I can at talking about myself, which is always hard to do. My name's Mike Warner. I am originally a DJ turned independent artist turned guy that talks way too much about playlists. I'm also part of the team at Chartmetric. I look after artist and label relations, which basically means I talk to a lot of people and have a lot of fun conversations and get to geek out about different data points. And that's why Jason and I get along so well. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, everybody. My name is Jason Joven, manager of content insights at Chartmetric. My background is, before this, I was a Navy officer. I was actually working in intelligence and had the skill set of working with like lots of disparate pieces of information and basically telling a story. But I just missed music, which I grew up in the grunge era, so Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Green Day were my bands growing up, and still make music to this day. So both Mike and I have a very firsthand love of music, and have now attached the data piece to it. So right now, my job in the company is to kind of be that layer in between the nerdy data stuff and translate that to not only artist managers, but also labels and artists themselves, and anyone who's has at least one foot in the business, if not both, and need to understand all the random numbers and charts flying their way on all the different platforms. So we have a blog, we have a podcast, we make semi-annual reports to kind of summarize what's been happening over the past, X amount of time, just to try to take advantage of all the information that we have. And that's us. So let's go ahead and just get into it. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Chartmetric, the company, for a little bit. And then Mike's going to start talking about some of the other like DSP backends that you see and are, I'm sure, very, very well familiar with. And then we'll switch it back over and talk a little bit about some of the features in Chartmetric, not to talk about just Chartmetric, because I know this is more about like the wider scope of like how to use data. So we're just going to use it as a kind of window into the things that you can do with it. But obviously, because we're most familiar with Chartmetric, we're going to talk about it through that lens. So Chartmetric, if you're not familiar with it, it's a rather new company. It started in about 2016. It was started by a founder based out of Korea, actually, named Sung Cho. And it started off as a K-pop analytics platform. For those of you who are tracking, or maybe you're even working K-pop, didn't find that it was as lucrative a market or as wide of a market as a lot of what was needed in the West. And so that's how we faced ourselves towards that direction. That's where we are today. It's a small team. There's only about like 15 to 20 people working for us right now. Most of us on the tech side of things. By that I mean some of the data scientists that we have, and our computer engineers were based on the northern part of California, in the Silicon Valley, of course. And then Mike is based in San Diego. I'm based in New York, along with a couple other colleagues. And yeah, and that's what we do. Oh, I can't forget Chaz. He's based out in the UK, for all our European people tuning in today. So that's us. I would say with all the other tools that are available in the space, if you're not familiar with them, there's sound charts, there's Fortunes, there's Next Big Sound that's been around for a while. There's Nielsen Music Connect, companies big and small, a lot of them in the space and more every day. I think the part that we bring to the table is integrating it with a lot of data science, because we collect currently, I think it's 2.3 million artists that we track on the platform. We have over 20 different data sources, from streaming platforms to social media platforms, including ones you probably don't even expect. Like we'll track Genius, if you're interested on the lyrics front. We have Wikipedia views for artist profiles. A lot of different kind of ways into how to track your digital presence, and sometimes not even just digital, because we're on Bandsintown, we're on radio airplay through this provider called the ACR Cloud. They track digital radio streams. So a lot of different kind of ways to track your data and try to synthesize it. And so that's where a lot of the data science comes in. I think, as you'll see later on in our talk today, that's kind of like where we kind of make ourselves out to be not only just a broadsword, but also like a surgical one too. So you can kind of get the big picture, but if you want to drill down, we have that stuff as well. So that's us in a nutshell. I think it's probably just best we get into the tool later on. But before we get to that, Mike, if you want to take it to the DSP backend.
Absolutely.
All right. Cool.
Let me press that magic button and share my screen. Perfect. So if anybody can't see my screen, chime in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going and assume that all is good and all is clear here. But what I wanted to do, yes, here on behalf of Chartmetric, but I wanted to draw attention to all of the free tools that are available to artists that all of the DSPs provide. And that's obviously very important, because for an independent artist, these tools are available to you, and some people may not be aware of them. Once I've presented these, we are then going to jump back in and look at some of the data points and how you use those as leverage and how you could use those to further your career. So to begin this quick overview, and with respect to these tools, I won't be logging in and showing you their dashboards. Obviously, you can go and sign up yourself on these sites for free and explore them at your own pace. I'm not here to demonstrate their products for them. I feel I wouldn't do the right job or do them justice. So the very first one here is Gommi for artists. And obviously, Gommi lets you claim your profile, but they also show various data relating to where your listeners are coming from, how many streams you're getting. There's also some interesting data that I did see in there relating to earnings as well. So it's worth claiming your profile, going in there and checking those tools out. The next one is Amazon Music for Artists. Now, this is relatively new and only available as an app that you download onto your iOS or Android device. There is no web version where you can log in and see any of this, so you need the app on your mobile device. Depending on how many accounts you have created, you can get fast-tracked access as well. So they may ask you to log in with your Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter to prove that you are that artist and get access sooner. One thing about Amazon Music for Artists that they show is, obviously they show editorial support, but one really unique feature is they show voice requests. So they will show you the number of times that someone has said to the Alexa device in their home, Alexa, play music by this artist, or Alexa, play this song, or Alexa, play this album. Obviously, knowing how many people are requesting you specifically from a device in their home is a great metric to have access to. And it will even go as far as showing you how many people have said part of the lyrics to one of your songs. So they may have said, for example, Alexa, play the song that goes, and then they said some of the lyrics and found your song that way. Jumping on to the next tool is Apple Music for Artists. Recently, they merged Shazam for Artists into Apple Music for Artists. So yes, you get access to all of the data relating to Apple Music and stream counts, playlist ads, chart positions, of course, but you also get to see Shazam counts within Apple Music for Artists as well. The next one is Deezer Backstage. A lot of people don't seem to be aware that this exists, and it is relatively new. They haven't done much advertising for it, at least here in the US, but it is a very handy tool. It once again gives you access to stream counts, playlists. You can update your profile within Deezer. You can actually post a status update to your artist profile in Deezer with whatever you would like. So similar to an artist pick in Spotify, it's a message that everyone will see on your profile, but you can say whatever you would like on there. So you could tell people what you're working on as far as an upcoming album or things like that. The next one, now I apologize if I say any of these names incorrectly, but I'm going to assume that I am saying correctly. GeoSarven, you can get access in here to GeoSarven for Artists, and I'm sure someone will correct me in the chat if I say that incorrectly. But once again, you get access to all of those data points, stream counts, editorial consideration. What I like about this tool is it encourages you to collaborate with other artists, and it will actually help you to find those artists and basically say, collaborating with this artist could help you to expand your fan base to reach their fans and vice versa. So they're really encouraging collaboration, which of course, given the current situation, is a really good idea. While a lot of people are focusing on music from home, online collaboration is really the only option that many of us have right now. So definitely worth signing up, checking that out, and you may find a new collaborator. And thank you for telling me I said it correctly. The next one, Pandora's artist marketing platform, also known as AMP. There is a lot that you can do in here, but as far as what makes this unique to the other ones, you can pitch to Pandora's editors, but you can actually pitch a song that was previously released up to 1 year ago. So if you released a song 6 months ago, 9 months ago, you can actually submit that and have the Pandora team review it, add some extra tags to it, listen to it, maybe even program it somewhere, whether it's within a radio station in there or Pandora also have playlists as well now. So completely free, signing up there as well. And that ties in with Next Big Sound, which you get access to through your Pandora AMP login. You can go in and see in detail the audience data, programming, placements as well. Spotify for artists, very straightforward. I feel like Spotify, what makes them unique is that they do a lot of emails that they send out to artists. So what that means is if you've gone into your Spotify for artists and you've uploaded an image, you've given Spotify permission to use that image or that photo. Your followers from time to time may receive emails from Spotify. And some examples of this are upcoming shows in your city from artists that you love. And so they may get an email saying that this artist is performing in this city, and a direct link to buy tickets and a direct link to your profile, all because you uploaded the photo and you linked Songkick to your Spotify for Artists profile. The next one, very, very new, is they actually call it YouTube's new analytics for artists is the title that they gave it last week when they pushed this new update. Essentially, it is, you can go to artists.youtube.com to find out more information. But once you have a artist channel in YouTube, you would go to studio.youtube.com, and then you would see that you would actually get artist analytics within studio.youtube.com. And there's some interesting features that are unique to YouTube's analytics, where they show all of the user-generated content or videos created by YouTube users that have used your music in them. Whether it's 50% of the video contains your song, or they've used the song in its entirety in their video, you can see that. They also show where people are coming from before they land on your YouTube artist channel. So they will show if they're coming from a Google search or another website, and it will actually show you exactly where they are coming from as far as the URL. Obviously, it will also show you if they're coming from social media, such as a swipe up in an Instagram story or Twitter. So that's my quickest overview that I could do of just some of the free tools that are available to artists. I could talk about these all day, but I tried to just pick one feature from each in the interest of time. I encourage you to go and check all these out yourself as independent artists. And let's jump back over to Jason, if you are ready, Jason. And I will stop sharing my screen.
All good. Thank you, sir. Maybe we can take a pause real quick. If anyone has any questions in the chat, we'd be happy to kind of talk about something specifically.
So we have a couple of questions here. Yeah, it'll be interesting to understand what people are using out there, because most of these for art from the DSPs are relatively new to me, but it's interesting to understand what everybody here uses. So we have, do you guys see the questions, by the way? Does everybody see the questions?
I'm just seeing the general chat.
Okay. So we have one question from Marcus Nero. For someone who currently works in data but not music, do you have any recommendations for personal projects and or tools to learn to get familiar with the industry standards for music?
Yeah.
Chartmetric,
tool,
maybe?
Well, yeah, of course. Chartmetric is the obvious one. You can make a free account. Just go to app.chartmetric.com/signup, and feel free to hit us up afterwards. I think we could send something to everyone who's attending today for like a free premium trial. But yeah, besides,
say a word about that, then at the end of this webinar, we're going to be sending everyone a form that you can fill out and sign up for a 60-day, I believe, trial for Chartmetric, a free 60-day trial.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I would say, besides us, Next Big Sound was in the space like in mid to late 2000s for those who are not familiar with them. And they were kind of like the OGs of the space, if you will. They were kind of here and banging that drum in the street of, hey, music analytics is a thing. And guess what? It's important. because it really wasn't a thing then. And that was only 10 or so years ago. It wasn't that long. So, we're definitely benefactors from them. So they have a beautiful interface. We're a huge fan of the way they display information because it can be so confusing, and they do a great job of that. In terms of personal projects, start a band or start making some music and just do it yourself. It's a really great way to just put yourself in the driver's seat, because all this stuff is really secondary to whatever the artist does. And so if you can be the artist yourself, or maybe if you have a friend who's got a band or something like that, and manage them and look at their data, it's just a great way to navigate it. Mike, do you have any other thoughts?
No, you hit it on the head. I don't really have anything else to add.
I also can say from, I think this question was asked before Mike covered a bunch of different artist tools for DSPs. So that can be also interesting to check out the artist side of things to kind of understand where your analytics are going. And we have another question here. On the tools presented, what data points, metrics would be most valuable for independent artists? Which metric should an independent artist try to optimize for? I don't know if you guys want to cover that later on when we go into Chartmetric, but your call.
Yeah, I feel like it might help to have a visual up. I mean, we could talk about it now, but then we could also show everyone when we get the screen up on Chartmetric shortly. Once again, we will be showing Chartmetric, but that being said, this information you could get from anywhere. We just want to help you to understand it however you get this information. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different data points that come to mind, and it really, I think it also depends on the goal for the artist. If you want a tour and you want to route a tour, obviously we're thinking outside of the current situation, and when we get back to touring, you would be looking at where your listeners are based and looking at similar artists and seeing where their listeners are based and seeing if you could potentially get some support acts for each other or even put on a show together. If you're looking at making a living out of creating music from home, you have no interest in touring, you just want to put the music out, then your focus may be more on playlists and editorial and just getting those listeners in to bring those streams in. It's going to be different for each person. I would say you need to focus on what your goal is as far as what's going to make you happy. Do you want to be touring, or do you have no interest in touring whatsoever and you would like to just be based at home creating music? Or would you like to be more behind the scenes? I mean, I'm sure we have producers in here that produce for other artists and they want to put in some extra work themselves to make sure that those projects are successful, but they're not necessarily putting their name front and center. They're sort of more behind the scenes. So I'd love to see in the chat what everyone's goals are, what they're sort of working towards as well, and then we can steer this in that direction, of course.
Absolutely. 100%. Cool. Should we just keep it moving then, Omar?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen. I've got Chartmetric online here. Can everybody see that okay? I've got it zoomed in a little bit, so hopefully people can see it. But if you haven't seen Chartmetric before, yeah, cool.
Maybe another little zoom in. Jason.
Another one? Yeah, sure. There we go.
Great.
So if you're not familiar with Chartmetric, so this is kind of what one of our main windows looks like. This is what we call our artist list. And so, I misspoke before. We're at 2.2 million artists that we're tracking worldwide. This is kind of like a long, forever scroll of all the artists that we're following. And this is kind of like a good, first look into kind of what is possible on not just our platform, but really any platform, whether it be, Music Connect or Next Big Sound or Sound Charts or what have you. This is kind of like usually where a lot of the tools start is with an artist focus. And so this is kind of where ours starts. And so you can see, you can kind of look and you can sort by, we talk about TikTok a lot. So you can look by, for those of these artists that we have connected TikTok accounts for, you can kind of sort by that. descending, or if you're really into Spotify right now, you can sort by Spotify monthly listeners and see who's super hot right now, monthly listeners versus followers, which is a whole other talk we can get into later if anybody's interested. But usually this is kind of trending towards people who just dropped a new release, or you're just Ariana or Justin Bieber. But usually that's a differentiation between monthly listeners and followers, with monthly listeners more of a short-term kind of what's going on in the past month and what's been trending in the past month, because it's a running 28-day reach metric, essentially, between not how many times someone listens to, but how many unique people listen to a certain artist. And then versus followers, which is more of a long-term kind of metric, which we can get into, because I think that last question was really kind of insightful, because followers is kind of like a long-term fan building thing, which might happen slower and not as quick and sexy as monthly listeners, being put on a really hot playlist, for example, but both are to be valid in their own way. With this artist list, one of the things we do besides the data science is just sort things in a way that's really understandable. So if you're really into like German hip hop, I can sort by the artists that we have sorted as being from Germany or currently based in Germany. And then we can have that. And then eventually what we have is our own system of genres. We have about 20 different parent genres, which you can see here. And these are kind of what most of us will understand. They're a little bit geographical, but mostly based off of the sonics itself. And then if we want to go to hip hop, we just go to hip hop and rap, click that, and then we already cut it down to 31,000 German artists, but now we're gonna cut it down a little bit more. Now we've got 1,100. And so judging by, let's say, Spotify followers, this is kind of like what we're looking at in terms of who are the most followed on Spotify German hip hop or rap artists. If you want to get real nerdy, we have subgenres as well. So these are like different types of subgenres within this. We have more than one subgenre attached to each artist. That's why you see some of these other ones that you might not expect. But that's essentially what you can do. And then also, if you're looking for different types of statistics within one of these subsets, you can do that as well. So again, don't want to try to get into like Chartmetric features as much as why this kind of thing would be useful. Just like Mike was talking about, eventually when we do get to touring back again, and let's say you're a European artist and you want to do your thing in Germany for a little bit, these could be good people to collaborate with, or at least reach out to do some kind of like campaign with. That's the idea here. And this is kind of like one of the reasons we have artist lists. But now if we go to kind of what's our bread and butter, which is our artist page, this is what we're looking at here. I pulled up Sophie Tucker because she just came up in a conversation of mine recently. If you ever played FIFA 2018, you probably set up your roster to this artist. She's definitely on that EA soundtrack. And this is kind of like where it all happens for us. This is definitely our most popular page within Chartmetric. And it really just calls upon what I mentioned before with a lot of these other tools that are out there in the space. It's very focused on the artist and like what is a certain artist's vibe right now when it comes to their metrics. So you'll see at the top here, you have a lot of things that that are pretty self-explanatory. But we'll do a couple other things that maybe just go one step further. For example, we have a fan conversion ratio, which is essentially the number of followers divided by the monthly listeners. So this goes to what I mentioned a few minutes ago about, when you are hot now, your Spotify monthly listeners will usually be up, but followers usually rarely goes down, whereas monthly listeners can fluctuate. So usually you're on your way up for the followers, and that's in the long term really what you're looking for. And I imagine if this is an artist manager crowd listening, that's really what you're really interested in the long run. And this is kind of like the idea being, if you're converting all of your monthly listeners into followers, you should be at 100%, and that would be golden. That would be just amazing, that everyone who gets 30 seconds of a listen to your song, you're like, yeah, I got to follow that person. That's kind of, of course, what everyone's aiming for. So that's kind of like one thing to put things in perspective. And then you have, fans also like, these are also similar artists to Sophie Tucker. And you can click on these genres too. You can see other artists who are, electropop, for example. And this brings up a certain feature that we have called neighboring artists, but I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit and say that you can do this essentially on your own. It just will take a little bit longer. But essentially what we do with neighboring artists, and you can see this in different parts of our platform, is we take what you can see here, if you're not familiar with Sophie Tucker, these are kind of like some of the subgenres that she's been kind of like put together with: indie poptimism, vapor soul, indie electro pop, so on and so on. And so we kind of go into our system and look at other artists who are also at a similar place career-wise, or at least metric-wise. And I'll show you what I mean is, right now we're looking at 10 other artists who are kind of 5 up and 5 down from Sophie Tucker in terms of our own ranking. And by that, I mean the CPP, cross-platform performance. I'm trying to make, this is starting to sound like a like a demo, but it's essentially our own like ranking system where we rank our 2.2 million artists like every day. And it's kind of like this, it's supposed to be sensitive enough to be able to pick up on if you're really trending on Instagram or TikTok or something, or not TikTok yet, but Instagram or Twitter, it'll shift up or down. And so right now, these are other artists who are in the same sound space, but also in the same similar popularity level as Sophie Tucker. So we have Billie Eilish's producer, Phineas, and brother. Ash has been really hot because of it was a Netflix show that she had a really big song on recently. So she's doing quite well for herself. Shade, and a few others. But you can see that if, let's say you're more interested in YouTube, you can kind of like look at what are similar artists who are in a similar sound space as her, but specifically to YouTube. You can look at channel views, and you can see the same thing. A lot of times you'll see similar artists, but in this case, we have a whole new set of 10 artists. So the idea here is to look for people to collaborate with, do a social media campaign with, to collaborate with on a song with. You know, maybe you want to find someone who's a little bit bigger than you on YouTube and you want to reach out to them. This is a great way to kind of get to that without having to click around YouTube for like the next few days. It's a great time saver, which is kind of what we try to focus on. And so another thing too here is all the different data sources that we connect to. It looks like Sophie Tucker is also on TikTok. So if you are not familiar with TikTok, this is what it looks like. You can click out to any one of our artists' data sources real quick if you want to check out their vibe, because it looks like this is the kind of thing that they do. Freaky Friday, hashtag Freaky Friday. It looks like she's just got a fun TikTok going on, as is fitting for that particular space. And you can do that with any one of these here. And if you're curious about getting your artists on here, if you've got some emerging artists who are not yet on our platform, you can always click on this and you can update it here firsthand so we can start tracking it. And so, yeah, and I should keep going at this point. These are a bunch of charts that look at Sophie Tucker's data over time. So, when you're looking at your data, a lot of times you're looking for cause and effects. And so we have a certain thing called chart sync where you can kind of look along the same time frame. Let's say let's blow this out to a year. You can look at, how does this, how does your Spotify followers, for example, connect with your Instagram? So you can kind of see, like, as time goes on, it looks like there must have been like a big release, like or something happened in like April 20th around. It looks like something happened here. And if I shift into that a little bit, whoops. You can start to see, well, we have a bunch of events here. These are flags as well. If we have a bunch of flags down here as well, because we plug into Songkick and Bands in Town as well. So, if you have a certain like really huge show, you can kind of take note of that as well. It looks like she had a new release here. Oh, okay. So they were part of Global Citizen. I didn't know that, but now I do. That's kind of the reason that we have these flags, is so she was a part of this release for the Global Citizen Festival that came out back in April of this year. And so that obviously gave her a bump on Instagram, which is good to know, because if you spent a whole month trying to get your artist onto a certain thing, you probably want to know how worth it was. And so that's the point of that. By the way, you can kind of, again, time savers, you can click on any one of these things in case you're checking out another artist, maybe not yours, and go straight to their platform here to get further information. So that should be good for now. We have another kind of more general neighboring artists platform here. You can also do this for social media as well. So it defaults to streaming platforms, but you can kind of do this for, if maybe your artist is really politically oriented or just loves being funny on Twitter, you can kind of focus on Twitter followers or Wikipedia views. If you're focused on a curiosity level, Wikipedia is really good for that. We can do this on a streaming and social kind of media basis as well. So this has been a really hot part for us, and really just the general space of music analytics as time goes on, is kind of like regional data or city level data. We have city level data for most of our artists, and they're kind of broken out on different platforms. So for example, we have Spotify top cities by monthly listeners, so should be self-explanatory, but essentially we have it by, if you're trying to look at, where are your current monthly listeners happening on Spotify, you can kind of look here and look at a big drop-down list and compare it to whoever's has the top number of monthly listeners in that particular city. So right now, Sydney, Justin Bieber has 714,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, whereas Sophie Tucker has 150,000. It's just good to kind of put yourself in comparison to whoever's kind of earning the most in that particular area, because a lot of times it's, again, someone to possibly either point yourself towards, or maybe some management to reach out to if you want to kind of learn about, best practices in a certain region, because of course things are different in different cultures. This is kind of like another great way to do it. I'm gonna keep moving on because I don't want to take up too much of our time here. We want to leave time for questions as well, but we have this for YouTube. In video views, we have audience analytics for Instagram. So this gets a little bit further into it. We can go into what languages certain followers or likers of a certain artist can get into, what's the male, female, and age brackets on it, also where they are. And this has been an unexpected kind of boon for a lot of Chartmetric users. But if you have this on your Instagram analytics, by all means, another way to do it. So this is notable followers. A lot of times people don't even know that a former Victoria's Secret model is following your artist, which is a great thing to know, because you can reach out and do maybe a really cool theme on that when it comes to social media, or do some kind of brand activation. So that's useful. Also, if you're not familiar with an artist, here's kind of like their Instagram top post, and you can kind of get their vibe. We also have audience analytics for YouTube. Similar things going on. We get this from the same data source, named what's called social data. And then we have playlist evolutions as well. I'm gonna leave playlists alone for now because Mike's gonna get into that. And but yeah, a lot of information. This is all playlist data from Amazon, from YouTube, Deezer. We also have airplay data. So we currently track 1,000 stations worldwide. We worked with our users and a lot of super users to understand where the best radio stations, or the ones they're most concerned with tracking. And so we track 1,000 worldwide. And so we have the number of plays that your particular artists have had in the past 28 days, 90 days. It really just depends on whatever time frame you want to look at. And then we even have TV syncs too. So if your artist has been lucky enough to get onto a TV or film show, or the music has gotten to a TV or film show, you can track that here as well. I'm going to, Mike, do you want to take playlist next, or you want me to keep going?
If you need to stop and breathe for a second, I totally understand. That was a lot, man.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, look,
go, Mike.
But if you've got something you wanted to finish off first before we switch, let me know.
Sure. Let me just do cities real quick then, Mike. One thing I wanted to touch on, because I think we're the only tool that does it right now. Again, not to put too much of a thing on Chartmetric, but just to emphasize the importance of geography into all this, is our look at cities. So we're looking at a little bit over 16,000 cities worldwide, and we have city level data for that. If I happen to be based in New York, so I'll look at New York right now, and right now this is kind of like a vibe page for New York. If you're looking for information on a certain city, maybe you want to tour there, maybe your artist wants to move there and you're trying to understand the place better, maybe you're trying to do an Instagram campaign targeted towards people in New York City, who should I reach out to, what are New Yorkers listening to? This is kind of what the tool is for. So for example, right now, hip hop rap really huge in New York. Not a surprise to anyone, but you can kind of click on it and you can look at specifically what are the tracks. And in this case, it's top tracks by Shazam chart occurrences. So Shazam has a chart system where they can look at the top, I think it's 50 tracks on any given day. And within this genre, this is what has been kind of up on their chart for this particular city. So, which is super cool, because you can kind of go into these track pages or look at the artists themselves and kind of understand them better. We have the same thing based on genre for ACR Cloud. This is our airplay data provider. So a different perspective, pop. So probably what you're going to see a lot in most cities, because pop is of course popular music. So that's what's going to trend most on radio. And so you can see specifically what tracks are really trending in that space as well. Fun section is artists in the city. If we have information from their Facebook or for their Wikipedia, we'll try to kind of figure out where they're currently based or where they're from and make that known here. And again, you can kind of like look for certain artists here. It looks like if you want to find Elton John's one of the top artists by local Spotify monthly listeners. Again, this is specifically in New York City, which is pretty cool. It's 170,000 currently for Elton John, but it's kind of also a live like search box you have here. And then we have the same thing for local YouTube video views and also local Instagram followers. One of the things we wrote about in our Chartmetric blog is kind of like the differences between platforms when it comes to different regions of the world. For example, if you work a lot in Instagram, you may already know that Brazil right now is just really loving Instagram, and you'll frequently see a lot of localization happening specifically on Instagram as a platform. So there's a certain piece to each platform, like in terms of where is the platform overall trending, but also specifically what are the behaviors of the users of that platform. For example, when we were looking at Southeast Asia for a little bit, Instagram tend to be, again, very local artists, local singers, local actors/singers, stuff like that. Whereas Spotify was kind of like where South Asian listeners went to listen to Western or English-speaking music. Which is good to know because it helps you kind of focus your resources. Let's say it's just you and your artist, or you have a really kind of skeleton team and you can only pay attention to so many things at a certain time. That kind of stuff is really good to know. So you can really get a window into that with the cities tool here. You can even do it at the track level too as well. So I think that's it. We have a real quick, we have a chart section as well, but these are all publicly available. You can look like at a TikTok chart. For example, if you click on this, it's TikTok /trending, or at least now this is for you. But you have, there's a Spotify top 200, which is also public. A lot of these, I won't have to go through all of them piece by piece, but essentially there's a chart system here that's always good to check out and filter by country if it's available, so you can, again, better understand the geography of things and what happens to be trending at a certain point in time. I think it's it for me now, Mike. I'll let you take over so I can not bore these people to death.
Thanks, Jason. Can I add something from a few questions that I'm sure will be also relevant for a lot of people here? Like, Chartmetric is obviously an amazing tool, and I really love these new features. I think they're new. The notable followers, the info about the cities, which are very smart and out of the box. I wanted to know, like, for artists that are more, maybe Mike, you'll touch on that maybe later. For artists that are more emerging or at the beginning of their career, like they have thousands of followers, I'm not sure how many data points like you can connect to kind of show them their neighboring artists and stuff like that. But I'm assuming that a lot of artists are kind of like in that point where they want to use Chartmetric to find the right playlist, to find the right artist to collaborate with, or other stuff. And I guess the question is, for these artists, what would be the key areas to look at and kind of base strategies on? So maybe that's a bit more in depth, but that's kind of where I think the next part of our discussion should maybe develop.
Sure. So for an artist that's brand new starting out, obviously they're not going to have any related artists. They're not going to have any followers. We all start at zero. What I suggest to an artist is I'll say, if they're looking for somewhere to start, I'll say, look at an artist that you feel your music is similar to. And, whether that's an established artist or someone in the earlier stages, either is fine. From there, and I say this from experience because I did this when I went into a new project and was a self-released independent artist. I will tell you the steps that I did. I went into Spotify. I looked at those artists that were creating similar music, and I did this on the computer in the app, so on my laptop. And I went to an artist profile page in Spotify. I went to the About tab, and I looked at the Discovered On section. And this shows up to the top 5 playlists that are delivering the highest number of unique monthly listeners for that artist. And from there, I would start to look and see what other artists were getting placed on those playlists and who curates them. Because obviously, if it says Spotify, we know that that's somebody that works at Spotify, that's editorial. But if it says any other name, then that would be enough information for me to start searching and start digging deeper to find them. The process of finding curators and reaching out to them and the best ways to do it is not something I can explain in even 5 minutes or less. That being said, I wrote an entire book about it, and this is not a sales pitch. It's free right now for anyone that wants it. So there's a link in the chat if anyone wants to see how they can grab it.
Wow, amazing. I'm going to run and get it.
When I say that, it's not me being too lazy to talk about it. It's the fact that there's a book that's there where I've outlined the process in a lot more detail than I could in here. But as far as the finding them, obviously I mentioned the way that I did it in Spotify itself. And then there are other services. Obviously, Chartmetric is one of them, where you can go and just find curators and find playlists and start to find ways to try and contact them and reach out to them as well.
Before we go into the playlists, are there other like stuff that emerging artists could should focus on to base like growth strategies that don't involve playlisting necessarily?
Collaboration is one that comes to mind immediately. It's something I wish I did in the earlier stages. So the way that works is, let's say you've got an artist that has 500 followers on Spotify and you have 0. If you collaborate with them and both artist names are main artists, that song will go as a new release onto both artist profiles on Spotify. It will, if all those steps are followed within Spotify for artists with submitting music, you will go into release radar for the followers of both of those main artists. And any monthly listeners that are gained from that song will apply to both artist profiles as well. So if that song gets a playlist and gets 20,000 monthly listeners as a result, both of those artists will go up that number of monthly listeners. So for a brand new artist, it's almost a way to fast track your numbers without cheating, without doing anything that you shouldn't do. You're just simply collaborating with an artist that is a little more established, that already has that following. And so yeah,
how would we find that on Chartmetric? There's a neighboring artist and similar artists, correct?
Yeah.
There are two different types. So can you explain a little bit about that? And then I'll just ask another question from Chirag. I hope I said that right. And then, Mike, I won't hijack your moment anymore.
No, please do. Let's do this. I'm enjoying it. Jason, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I'll just answer real quick. So the similar artist is really just what you see in the fans also like on Spotify, or I think we also source that from, we used to source it from also Last.fm, and then maybe to a certain degree Apple Music too. I might be mistaken on that, but it's just a simple similar artist. Whereas neighboring artist is like kind of like really the more like focused on the sonics as how we define it, because of all the metadata that we get from all these different platforms, and then also in conjunction with all the different metrics you can kind of sort by. So I would say for like really going hardcore, use a neighboring artist. But if you're just kind of casually like looking around into a space, similar artist works just fine. I can see how that could be confusing though. Thank you for bringing that up.
Great. So question from Chirag. Is there any platform that tracks Triller views on followers? Given the current condition with TikTok, I feel like Triller would be one platform people will start using more.
Not that I've seen. That would be really handy. I don't know. Jason, do you know? If you know of one, please feel free to chime in.
No, don't know of one now. Hopefully, if there will be one, it will be us as part of it. But no, it's definitely something that we've thought about ourselves, just reading about some of the things that have not been so flattering about TikTok in the news. So, not that I know of. currently.
If I can,
yeah, go ahead.
Once you're done, Jason, I have something to add at the end.
No, I just want to say I'm just kind of like spitballing here too, but I definitely see, last time I logged on to Triller, the first thing I saw was a post from them welcoming all of the Indian TikTokers after that news thing came out. So they're ready to kind of make their move, as you can see. So, as long as they're doing that, I'm pretty sure we'll try to get on that as soon as possible.
Yeah, just to add to that, when all of these new apps come out, so Triller is not new, but right now a lot more people are flocking to it, or running to it right now, because that's the next app that they can use to communicate in the way that feels similar to TikTok. When I first saw Triller starting to chart in the App Store, and good tip, always monitor the App Store and look at music apps and social apps. As soon as you see something start charting, just go in there and claim your username, create an account, because I'm on Triller at Mike Warner. I got my own name. For artists, you want to do the same, especially if your artist name is a common word or a common saying. It's much easier to get that username than to have some ridiculous username that's a series of letters and numbers. So, go in there and do that with Triller, with TikTok, with all of these apps. Even if you don't necessarily think you're going to use it right now, just claim that username so you have it. And there's also a number of, I can't think of the name of the site right now, but a quick search on the web, and there's websites that do social name checking, where you can type in the username handle that you would like for your social media, and it will show you all of the sites where that is available right now. So if you're deciding on a new artist name, you can actually do that to make sure that you're going to be able to claim the relevant social media handles and not have to create something weird. So yeah, just wanted to throw that tip in there as well.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so before we go to the next section, we have roughly around, I'll say around 20 to 25 minutes. I hope that's enough. If it's still interesting, I'm sure we can talk about that for hours, about Chartmetrics and playlisting. A few little things that I wanted to add in. First of all, TikTok came up a lot. We are having a webinar in a couple more weeks with a TikTok expert that actually has a band, and they actually grew through TikTok. So feel free to join us in a couple weeks, or to just subscribe to this our Crowdcast channel. And whoever would like to see this in replay, we already somebody asked already, then either here or on our YouTube channel, which I will add to the chat on the right. So great, Mike.
Fantastic. I'm trying to think what we should jump into next.
Good question.
If we're unsure, maybe if there's any more questions, but in the meantime, I can share my screen again and just elaborate more on another way that you could find curators and playlist curators within Chartmetric. I should mention, obviously, if this is starting to feel like a sales pitch, please don't take it that way. We do have 8 weeks complimentary access, which you will receive an email after this. So it is worth sticking around. We will give you that so that you have 8 weeks to go crazy, and you have access to everything in that. It's not limited in any way. So what we're showing you, we're not selling you. You will have access to it.
And thanks for that, by the way. I've been using it for the last few weeks myself. I think let's take, maybe, guys, if you have questions, guys and gals out there, if you have questions, feel free to kind of direct. We can go dive into playlisting a bit more, and also maybe talk about really strategies for these emerging, like I'm sure most of the, I'm assuming, I'm not sure. I'm assuming that most of the people here aren't like established or big artists. I'm sure it's more like medium-sized. So maybe like to focus on the matrix that we, as smaller artists, should be focusing on more, and what data we should take from there, and which actions maybe we should do from that. I feel like I asked this question, but I'm trying to a bit like make it more accurate. I don't know if I pinned it yet, but yeah, I see there's no question, so we can just go on.
Yeah, no problem. Let me press that magic button and put my screen. Go. Cool. So yeah, perfect. So within Chartmetric, as I mentioned, you can find, if you don't necessarily know of the playlist that you're looking for, you can start to drill down into what we have. So you can see here, we're tracking over 1 million playlists on Chartmetric. That's just for Spotify alone. And you can actually start to filter by country. So when we're available, we've actually been tagging playlists with the country where the curator is based or the music is mostly placed from. We also have genre, and we can also show just playlists from a specific curator. We have Spotify's genre and mood playlists. You can see playlists where the focus is mostly on catalog or frontline. So frontline is a playlist that features more than 75% of the songs are released within the last 18 months. So it's basically saying this playlist is mostly new music or newer music. And then there's other playlists where it's more catalog focused, and that means songs that were released anytime. So 20 years ago, 5 years ago, there's those catalogs there as well, which is useful to know for artists that don't necessarily have a brand new release right now and they are trying to push some of their catalog that they've already got out there. With these filters up the top as well, we can exclude Spotify and major label brands. So that simply means we won't see the Spotify editorial playlists that are curated by the team at Spotify. We also won't see major label brands such as Warner Music owned Topsify playlists, Sony Music owned Filter playlists, Universal Music owned Digster playlists. So we won't see those in there, so that we can start to drill deeper into playlists that are more likely to be curated by a person or a brand as well. And you will see as well, of course, artist playlists in here. But what I like about this is if we go to the curators page instead of the playlist page, we can focus on specific curators that curate within a genre. Once again, we can exclude Spotify and those major label playlist brands. Then we can also say we only want to see results for those where a social media URL has been added, such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. What that means now is that as we scroll down this list, of course, we can export it as a CSV and put that into a spreadsheet and start working through that ourselves. Or we can scroll down and we can go to any of these curators that we like, and it will take us straight to their page in Chartmetric, and we know that there's going to be at least one social media URL that has been added. Obviously, this will give you a way to potentially reach out to that curator, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And what we're finding is that a lot of curators have noticed people have found them on Chartmetric, so they've actually come in here and updated the links themselves to direct people to where they would like them to reach out. So basically saying, I'm taking my Facebook link off. I want people to reach out by Twitter or Instagram only. So that's been really helpful because it's a way to connect the curators with the artists and in the right way, instead of leading those artists to a personal Facebook profile where perhaps that curator does not want to be contacted. We can actually help be the person in between to connect the two. And so you've got all of those links here. There's website links. For some of these curators, they've gone as far as actually adding the submission link on their website under this button here, instead of just their website, which is extremely useful as well. So that's the playlist page and the curators page within Chartmetric. And that's, as mentioned, once you start to get these results down and you get to a list that you're looking that you may work with, you can export that as a CSV document, bring that in, and you can work through that however you would choose. Jason, did you have anything to add on to what I just showed with those 2 pages?
Yeah, I was thinking like playlist journeys. Did you want to touch on that?
You know, if you've got that up on your screen, I might let you touch on that, just because I've been having some fun with the resolution of my screen here, and I need to get it in a way that people would actually be able to see it accurately.
All good, all good. Let me go ahead and bring mine up.
Wondering what I'm talking about. I treated myself to a slightly larger screen, and the resolution is causing me to do some crazy things to be able to get everything correctly for this webinar. So, yeah, Jason, if you wouldn't mind sharing the playlist journey, just so hopefully everyone can see it.
All good. So I'm going to start where Mike left off. We're going to stick with Spotify for now. Let's say we're looking at chill hits. So I'm going to click on chill hits here. And specifically what I'm mentioning with playlist journeys is it's this idea. It's a feature for us, but it's really just the idea of like what are the relationships between playlists. And so if you've been really big into playlist strategy for a large portion of your careers, you probably know all about this already. But for those that are maybe less familiar or can always like learn more about maybe playlists you're not familiar with yet, what we do is essentially look at the playlist that a certain track has gone over the course of its life, so to speak. So you have track A, and it goes to playlist A, B, C, D, E, F over the course of time in terms of like what it gets added to. And so if we're looking at chill hits on Spotify, what we're doing right now is looking at all the other playlists tracks that are currently on chill hits, but they were added to other playlists before it, is what we're looking at right here on the screen that you're looking at right now. So for example, over the course of its history, Pool Lounge Hits has about 80% of a track overlap with chill hits that we have on record. It has X amount of followers, as all these other playlists have a different amount of followers. And this is essentially a timeline of looking at, these were all the different tracks, Daydreams, Days In, and Just a Boy hit Pool Lounge Hits 70 days before it finally hit chill hits at the end. And so this is looking backwards. And then you can also kind of click this look ahead thing. And the idea is now looking, if I look at a certain track that I had or a certain artist that I'm trying to emulate and the tracks that they've had, what playlists were they added to after a certain playlist? And so this is essentially just looking at, after it hits chill hits, where did it go and what playlists had the most in common? And, what does that, kind of look like? You can kind of go into the track itself on the page here as well. But this is just kind of another example of like how when you have data scientists who are like really awesome and really using creative ways to apply what that field can do for the music industry, it's kind of, this is one of the examples, because it's a crazy query that happens on the back end and it's pretty heavy, so to speak, is what it's called. It takes a minute, but it's helpful in terms of trying to understand, what are the relationships between, Hot Country and I think Nashville Boots is one of the smaller country music ones in the US. So yeah, that's all. That's all I wanted to point out.
It's a very interesting feature, and you make it seem so easy to implement. Nice. I think I'm sure that a lot of A&Rs and different kinds of industry influencers, professionals are using Chartmetric to kind of find the next peaking artist, the next emerging one. So this is kind of also a business tool for them, obviously. And I guess my question here, since I have access to the front line and nobody else is asking question, is in regards to an artist, what types of metrics are they looking at? Is there something that for an artist they can say, okay, I know that an A&R agent is looking for, number of playlisters or a CPP rank. So I need to achieve this number. which kind of gives even more focus a little bit. Do you have some sort of benchmarks in that sense?
Is my mic on? Hold on, my screen went blank.
I can rephrase if the question wasn't clear. One sec. I think Jason's internet is off.
Jason's internet just cut out. Well, that was a really difficult question. You know what? While Jason does come back, would you mind just rephrasing, and I'll do my best to answer that. I know Jason looked like he was ready to jump on, so.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to hearing his answer. So I'm guessing that different labels are using Chartmetric to kind of look at specific metrics, right? Like they would use Chartmetric to kind of see who's emerging now, I'm assuming. So are there particular benchmarks that they're looking for? For example, a specific score, a specific following that artists can kind of aim for?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a specific number or a magic number. I mean, I'm sure they have one, but I've not had somebody at a label come to me and go, oh, once the artist has X amount of monthly listeners, we'll pay attention to them or anything like that. I think from my experience speaking with labels, things that I've seen that have piqued their interest, or A&Rs, I should say as well, just anyone that's looking to work with an artist and develop them further. They're looking for how much growth the artist can achieve themselves in a short time span. So if an artist can achieve a significant number of playlist ads and a significant spike in monthly listeners, that's going to pique someone's attention, and they're going to look into that and see how did they get that. Is it just because their music's great, or are they putting in some work already themselves? I kind of compare it to when you're looking for a manager. Usually, you shouldn't go out and seek them. It should get to the point where they seek you. So basically, what that would look like is you're already booked out. You are just in demand. You don't have time to handle all these bookings. Someone then goes, okay, not only can I take care of that and handle those for you, but I can expand on that. That's kind of the way I look at it with these A&Rs. They look at the artist and they go, okay, this artist has already got the monthly listeners. They've already got the social media following. I can take that and I can expand on that, and I can get them to that next tier or that next level. That being said, a lot of artists now are becoming so truly DIY that they go, you know what, I'm good. I'm just going to keep growing this myself. It may take longer, but I have the tools. I have everything I need. I don't need someone else in my team at this time. I'm just going to keep growing as much as I can by myself first. But Jason, I know that you dropped off briefly there, and we're still talking about the same question as before. Just sort of what things could an A&R be focusing on in particular? What could they be looking at?
I can give even a specific example. For example, you guys have Spotify popularity, right? Which is a score of, maybe you can talk a little bit about that score. And I don't know, I'm assuming, again, all assumptions, that there are a few like key points that these A&Rs or labels are looking for. Obviously, they're looking for that growth. They're looking for control in different social platforms. They're looking on self-management as well, I'm sure. But let's see. For example, I heard a rumor. I don't know if it's true. One of our users told me that. The Spotify popularity matrix, when it gets to 16, then that's where like stuff start to happen.
Cool.
Maybe that's something that is completely made up, but that's like kind of what I'm asking, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Can everybody hear me, by the way? I don't know if my...
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So for those who are not familiar, so Spotify Popularity Index is like this normalized 0 to 100 metric that is from Spotify. No one else makes it. And essentially, it's at the artist level, but it's composed of different separate Spotify popularity indices for each of that artist track. And what that actual index means is the secret sauce that no one outside of Spotify really officially knows. But you can assume it has something to do with the amount of followers an artist has, how many plays it got, and the time that it was out, how many monthly listeners there are, how many library saves there were, how many skip rates, what the skip rate is on the track. Probably some crazy algorithm is what composes that 0 to 100 index. And then that kind of refreshes every 24 hours. So essentially, it's like a really all-inclusive way to evaluate the popularity of a certain artist or track. And so we do not know about the whole 16 being the magic number. Super cool to think of, though. But if you go to Chartmetric, we have an A&R tool where, like you mentioned, Omer, earlier, like we have had talent agencies, I'm thinking of one in particular right now, that they do look at, like, the past 28 days, who was trending the most, who gained the most followers on, X platform or Y platform, because that's kind of what they're focused on. And we also have kind of a predictive part of our A&R tool as well that looks kind of into the future, because we've looked at the data that we've collected since like 2016, 2017, specifically on Spotify, and specifically having to do with followers, monthly listeners, and what we kind of call SPI for the popularity index. And we look for the success patterns that have happened in the past. And without getting too nerdy, look for those same patterns in artists today who haven't broken that threshold of, let's say, 20 SPI or 30 SPI, and trying to predict in the next week or whatever who's going to break that. And so we kind of make a short list, and we kind of like have that available in the tool. So when it comes to like an artist themselves, like I don't know what the best way to raise your SPI is or anything like that. But to answer it in a way that isn't so Chartmetric focused, I want to at least put this link down in here. This is from Next Big Sound. Again, another one of the really great tools in the music analytics space. And so they've done this really cool thing, because they have data scientists as well, where they cluster. For those that are familiar with data science, they do this thing called clustering, which is essentially a function in data science which allows you to group a certain thing, in this case musical artists, into groups that make sense. And so using Facebook page likes, Twitter followers, Instagram followers, and YouTube or Vivo video views, they've been able to cluster what they label as undiscovered all the way to epic artists. And there are 5 different clusters of that, or levels or tiers, whatever you want to call it. And so if you want to, you can use these, because I'm sure they put a lot of thought into this, because they've taken all their artists on their own platform and put them into each one of these categories. And over the course of time, you'll see them progress from undiscovered all the way to epic, if they're lucky. So if you want to use these as, flags, by all means, like, it's a really smart team over at Next Big Sound. And so I would definitely don't just, toss to the wayside, but maybe it's something to shoot towards. Just so you have a hard number if you really want to kind of have that kind of thing. But, having said that, I agree with Mike. At the end of the day, it's about you finding the audience that you need to connect with and being able to connect with them.
Great stuff, guys. All right, so I think we'll be taking another few questions if anybody has. So feel free to ask now. Do you guys have other things you wanted to cover? We have like a few more minutes left.
I feel like that's a pretty good overview without overwhelming everyone, because I guess there's so much information that is available now, which is awesome. But at the same time, I don't want it to feel overwhelming for artists. Like, it's cool to have a look at these numbers, and if you want to check them every day, that's cool. But I guess it's don't get too focused on the numbers, because then you'll start to lose what it's truly about. So I'd prefer to see you spend an extra hour a day creating music than just looking at the same numbers over and over again and beating yourself up about it, or trying to get those extra few numbers in. So the reason I say that is I've seen some artists that have gone from creating every day to posting screenshots of their stream counts and asking people to stream their music every day and obsessing over it. And it gets to the point where that becomes their main focus. And you can tell that everything that they're doing now, they're thinking, how many people will actually listen to this? Will it work on a playlist, instead of just creating what they love? And I think that starts to show after a while. So, I mean, I think everyone here wants to make a living out of music, whether that is through streaming or touring, or hopefully a combination of everything, which, as we've discovered this year, is the safest option, to have multiple sources of income. But just be careful that that doesn't become the main focus, because a lot of these artists that are making a living out of music, they loved it a long time before they made money. I mean, I've been messing around with music for 15 years, and I make music that I enjoy. And I think that's what shows every time a new release comes out. It's clearly not created just to make money. And some of them don't make that much money. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think the only thing to add on to it is to try to use it as a source of creativity and discovery, as opposed to like data just being this bar I need to hit that seems like so far away in the future. At the risk of sounding, too loosey-goosey, but I don't care, because I guess I'm that kind of guy. Like I remember reading about this. It was like an American bluegrass band. I have no idea why I was looking at their data on Chartmetric, but I was. And they ended up finding a huge following in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I don't know what the scene is with bluegrass music in Sao Paulo. Maybe it's a whole thing. I don't know. But that artist ended up having this very robust dialogue with like a big, not a big, but like a very like dedicated small fan base in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I think they may have even played there a few times over the course of time. I don't know what it's like to be a bluegrass band member, but I'm pretty sure you're not thinking that you're going to have a huge following in Brazil. So I just think that's one of the cool ways where data can be a source of like creativity and discovery for folks. And I just really hope people can use it as that, as much as, of course, as a business analytics tool, but as a place to really connect with fans that maybe you didn't expect in the first place. Because at the end of the day, like, this is one of the things that's new about, the music industry in recent times, is the global, connectivity of everything. When you hit upload, it's everywhere. It's no longer just in whatever country you live in. So as long as people keep that in mind, as well as, of course, hitting your bars, whatever, your goals may be business-wise, to just discover where your audience is as well. I think that's super important to remember.
Audience and potential collaborators, which Mike referred to earlier. Cool. All right, guys, it looks like we don't have many questions left. So just to wrap up, I will add now the type form in the chat window. Feel free to fill it out. This is free access for the next 2 months for Chartmetric, which is pretty much intuitive. I'm sure a lot of people here used it before, and I'm sure it's kind of a no-brainer, and you can kind of just have fun on your own to kind of explore the different opportunities there. So we're going to add that now. And thanks everyone for joining us. It's been very insightful. Mike and Jason, thank you very much for all the insights and all of the walkthrough. Obviously, Chartmetric is one of the biggest players now in the music industry, and it's great to have you guys with us.
Thanks, Omer. Thanks for having us, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Omer.
For sure, guys. So again, we're going to put the link on the chat, and everyone have the rest of a good day, good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.